Welcome to this special discussion on open banking for SMEs in India. The time is now. Open banking is a buzzword in banking today and is perhaps one of the biggest technology trends that have happened in the last 50 years in banking. And it is really the practice of giving third party providers access to consumer financial data through application programming interfaces. And this solves a number of pain points, including the inability of customers to handle all of their finances from one central location, the difficulties that lenders face in creating full financial profiles, etc. And through open banking, lenders can especially help small businesses with more loans at more favorable terms because they have greater access and understanding of data when it comes to SMEs. And today we're going to be focusing mostly on SMEs in India because SMEs are the heart of Indian business. SMEs are India's growth engine, really, and they are also one of the segments with really struggles when it comes to credit. And to help us do that today in this special webinar on open banking for SMEs in India, we have three eminent panelists who come from different sectors and they all bring very unique views. So first up, we have Prakash Jaiswal, who is the country head of business banking at HSBC India, and he oversees the SME and startup business there. Prakash brings over 20 years of commercial banking experience in India. Thank you so much for being with us, Prakash, here today. Uh, Next up, we have Vineet Tyagi, who is the Global Chief Technology Officer and Country Head for Biz2X, which is a turnkey global SaaS platform that enables financial institutions to provide a customized lending experience for their small and mid-sized businesses. And Vineet brings over 25 years of experience to this discussion and to his role at Biz2X. And finally, last but not the least, we have Ritesh Kotian, who is the Manager Global Enterprises Financial Services with AWS. And as part of this global role, he leads the global financial services businesses for AWS in India. Thank you, Ritesh, for being with us here today. So even as I begin, right, I want to really first understand what open banking is all about. And all three of you panelists come from very different, come at this very interesting subject from very different perspectives. Prakash, you're a very experienced banker. Vineet, you're a pioneering enabler of open banking through digital. And Ritesh really represents the platform perspective since cloud is at the heart of open banking and making it possible, and AWS is the largest cloud provider in the world. So I want to ask each one of you, and starting with Prakash, how would each of you see open banking today, and especially from a global as well as an Indian perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Ivor. I think thanks for the opportunity, and good to see you, Vineet and Ritesh. I would say if you look at the whole SME set in India, it's a very large set, right? We have 65 million SMEs in the country. But if you look, and it's a very large contributor to the economy across data points, right? So it's an important set. But if you look at the set, a very large part of this pyramid is lack scale, right? I'm told 95% are micro. And when I think about why is it not been able to scale up, it's clearly the whole area of financial inclusion comes in. So that's how I broadly, as a banker, look at open banking. If you read the whole regulator and the government literature thought process on open banking, it says it will use internet and other digital channels to serve larger set of SMEs. That's how I look at I look at open banking. I think it will serve that problem, which we have not been able to serve through brick and mortar model of banking, right? So that's how I will, and we will get into various aspects of it from a banker's perspective, ever. But that's what I would say in the beginning.
I think that's a very interesting perspective that you started out with, Prakash, which will solve really the brick and mortar problems that are then. That's really at the heart of digital. Ritesh, what's your take on this? And Vineet, you could follow Ritesh with your specialized perspective from Biz2X.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity and great to connect Prakash and Vineet. I think for us, open banking started off in a very different way, right? I mean, essentially what we saw happening in UK, it started off more like a regulatory or a compliance from a compliance aspect, right? But what we feel is open banking is more than compliance. So essentially, as with Amazon, everything we do at Amazon, we are very, very customer obsessed. What we are seeing is consumer expectations, right? Even if it is a SME sector, it is a B2C B2B model. They are kind of pushing the whole disruption to build open APIs, to build open banking, right? So there was, I think, a study by Accenture which said about 67% of financial customers say that they would share more data with banks if they get newer benefits, right? And essentially, the whole aspect about open banking is an opportunity to kind of create a better customer experience, right? And there are multiple levels to it, and not going into too many details, but essentially, what it enables, it builds that technology ecosystem, right? Which Prakash alluded to in terms of laying the groundwork of how technology can enable some of the challenges we are seeing. It could be integrating fintechs into the banking value chain. It could be aggregating, customer data, transaction data. How can we get more personalization? More, delivery across portals and devices, because customers now are frankly used to kind of so many devices, and they don't really want, the brick and mortar experience which was previously there, right? And finally, for banks also, it opens up new distribution channels, right, for their products, for services. So essentially, we are seeing that paradigm shift of how open banking is kind of driving that innovation and that disruption.
Vineet, finally up to you. You bring a very unique perspective because you all are one of the enablers of open banking. So, what's your take on this very important question?
Thanks, Ivor, and thanks to Bloomberg to have me on this panel. And delighted to be part of the panel with Prakash and Ritesh. See, for me, open banking and the fact that Biz2X has been enabling these use cases globally. We operate lending marketplace in US under the brand Biz2Credit as well. For me, personally, open banking over the last 4 or 5 years really has been the excitement of the beyond banking type of use cases that you can build out of the open banking APIs, that you can set up. So having the open data and the APIs and the banking model, regulated banking model available to you to build something new, a very different use case on top of the banking capabilities is really what my experience has been, and I would like to talk more about that as we have the discussion further. But really, utilizing the data that is getting generated across different types of ecosystems today, and leveraging that to enable more deeper customer engagement helps the banks and the fintechs and other organizations equally well. From a customer perspective, open banking and beyond banking use cases are providing them much better choices at an accelerated pace. So innovation is kind of getting decentralized. You can innovate with the power of many rather than just a single bank innovating, and that is true innovation. Then when it gets democratized, everybody joins in for the common good, the best of the breed solution emerges. So that's been really what we've learned, and we are bringing together, and we're contributing to the Indian market as well.
So, Vineet, thank you so much for encapsulating that so well, really from a global as well as an India perspective. And I noticed that one of the key words that most of you all spoke about was really about customer experience. And that is where a lot of SMEs in India really suffer, right? And not just in terms of customer experience when it comes to their banking needs, but also simple things like credit, etc. And as a banker, Prakash, I wanted to throw this question to you. What are some of the key benefits of open banking when it comes to SME customers? Now, clearly, I think there's improved speed of access to credit, a wider range of choices, maybe less cumbersome paperwork, etc. So, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and I will link it to back to what Vineet was saying. Uh, Vineet did mention about creating capabilities by many people participating in the process, right? And I call it the whole platform and partnership approach. And I will spend maybe 30 seconds to explain my perspective. In banking or any conventional old economist businesses, the usual party line was that can you do on your own, right? And so was in any regulated industry, including banking. The whole open banking framework, and we'll talk about the regulation and legal as we progress in this dialogue, is enabling the whole partnership and platform. That's where Ritesh plays a role, Vineet plays a role, and we play a role, right? What it brings to so the whole partnership and platform approach, what it brings to the customer is a bouquet of capabilities, right? Now that I would want to link that to what benefit it does. Obviously, I did say in the earlier comment that it does solve the whole financial inclusion, which means it will create access, scalability, uh, and the whole bouquet of services and capabilities, all digitally enabled, will solve the whole problem of time to market and time to cash, right? The whole cost of acquisition, the whole issue in banking about cost related to time and an effort to reach to a small customer. Can a bank today give a 500 loan in an hour to a small, let's say, vegetable vendor in a small town in down south? No, it just doesn't make commercial sense. I think open banking will solve that. So in addition to access, where you will able to solve the whole financial inclusion thing we said, it will also solve the whole time and cost issue for the bank, which actually lies at the core when you want to do at a scale in a country like India, right? I also feel it will create a different capability in banking of portability, right? If you have 10 platforms all connected, all bouquet of services, people will be able to choose, right? Why would you go to the bank next door? Don't we see SMEs banking at the bank which is next door? So the whole brick and mortar thing we're talking about will get challenged, right? Uh, so I think those are the 2-3 things I would say at a broad level: access, scalability, financial inclusion, the whole time and cost effort. So the cost will be cheaper, and portability. And that's how I would think about it, Ivor.
Fascinating. That really is revolutionary, right? And I think that's why it is said that open banking is perhaps one of the biggest revolutions in the last 50 years. So I want to also look at perhaps a few open examples of some open banking success stories, and especially from a SME perspective. And so, Vineet and Ritesh, I want to throw this question to you. How have AWS and Biz2Credit helped power some of this? Vineet, if you'd like to start, please, with some interesting stories about which I think can also provide an indicator as to some of the things that will be possible in India.
Sure. I think carrying forward the conversation, on open banking, the successes are many and they are repeatable, and there continue to be newer use cases that keep getting discovered as we open banking as a capability is getting more and more established. So the amount of innovation that happens on top of that and the use cases which get built up are just accelerating. I can share a few where we are participating, both globally in US and also in India. So if you really look at it, it's all about effective utilization of data. Now, at the base level, open banking allows you democratize access to data, something that was not present to you or closed up in bank system or some other system somewhere and not being available openly, securely with consented mechanisms. So this openness and effective utilization of data, we built a use case, and very recently the government of US ran a program called the Paycheck Protection Program, which was a support program for the small businesses who were suffering revenue loss, direct revenue loss because of the pandemic, were being offered a soft loan or a grant by the US government. Now there are certain guidelines and rules and regulations which had to be followed, and KYC norms and other norms and basic checks of underwriting before you could get access to these funds. And a lot of banks had this data not available to them. They were not able to understand some of these gig players, these gig economy players like the Uber drivers, your salon owners who are just mom and pop stores which are helping the neighborhood. And they were truly not able to, despite everything and the best of their intentions and the ability of having large network, not able to help these small businesses get access to these government funds which were being made available to them. And Bis2X came in, and we had these systems which we had built up that allows us to understand the alternate data sets, like their history of billing from Uber, from alternate sources, payment gateways they have been using for charging their customers and whatnot, to get an estimate of their earning and tell the bank that this is a validated estimate of their earning. And because this is the earning, and the hence because it was tied to a revenue loss 2.5 times their monthly revenue or monthly payroll, so we were able to estimate that accurately and provide these tools to the banks. We also used it for our own quick onboarding, and we were able to get hundreds and thousands of US small businesses access to these immediate use funds in less than 48 hours, because we built this technology that would enable to seamlessly apply and instantly get access to these funds. And we made this technology available to all the banks so that they can help their customers. So that was a true partnership that we created. And of course, we built and scaled this on Amazon. So we went from doing 3,000 applications per month in a best of our month. During the PPP time, I remember, I also remember the date, 9th of March. Our system scaled up automatically to handle 60,000 applications in 6 hours running on Amazon. So, I mean, that's the fundamental nature of technology and the cloud elasticity that's needed to support these kind of, use cases. Of course, new channels and partnership models become useful because of, or become available because of open banking. In India, we are helping, and I can't name them right now, although we would be doing some joint announcements. But it's a very large aggregator of pharmacies who is using our technology, and we are working with several banks, Prakash's bank included, to help them connect with these aggregators and the people who are these small pharmacies who are customers who are being aggregated with these providers, understand their need and help the banks understand their needs so that they can get credit enablement for doing whatever is needed to grow their business. So I think these are some very real, effective, at scale stories that we have orchestrated, and have given us the confidence to say that open banking and beyond banking use cases are real, they're working, and technology is here today to scale it up to the next level.
So, Ritesh, that was a great endorsement from Vineet of the incredible thing that we did with AWS. So, can you tell us a little more about some of the examples you've seen of some success stories that have been hosted on AWS as well as maybe other players?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Vineet. Thanks for that. That's validation. It felt really good. And I can delve a little bit deeper. Like I think Vineet covered like multiple aspects there of how open banking is being leveraged by some of these customers to kind of essentially deliver value to their customers, right? And I think the first example which I would like to start with is Starling Bank. I think it was also mentioned. It is mentioned in the Niti Aayog paper for digital banks. So it's mentioned as a case study, and it's super powerful, right? And we are honored that we were a part of that to enable that. So this was, I think, somewhere around 2015 when the revised payment service directive, the PSD2, was kind of launched in UK, and Starling Bank kind of decided to respond to the regulation, but also some of the customer frustrations which they were seeing by building a bank on AWS, right? So they wanted to combine like a mobile first experience and having a fully licensed bank. So essentially build like a mobile first bank, right? So they built their open API from day one, became natively compliant with PS2 directive, and this gave them like a boost in terms of their competitors, right? So they essentially were able to innovate faster and bring that disruption. They released their open API in 2017, and also were able to launch the Starling marketplace to developers, right? So this essentially bank has now become a launchpad for several new payments banking integrations. And it was a very interesting quote from the CEO and founder, right? And who said that I saw a world where a company would do one thing really, really well, and then live in a marketplace where other services that came together and fulfilled every other banking need. And it kind of harks back to what Prakash was saying, right? I mean, how can we, bring all of the technology to kind of fulfill needs of SMEs, which we are not able to do now. A similar example again with Monzo, where they kind of came into the fore when they were seeing other banks trying to comply with the open API regulations. Monzo wasn't one of the banks which needed to do this, but they then built their mobile first bank on AWS, right? Today, Monzo probably runs around 400, core banking microservices, right? All running on AWS. They service about 500,000 customers, and very importantly, can do third-party integrations, right? So customers access their accounts, they get data from different third-party applications, all can be aggregated and give them a complete picture, which Vineet was kind of tagging to, right? So how can you integrate all of these aspects together? One last use case I can talk about, and which is a little bit out of the box, was for DBS. So DBS, essentially, they wanted to simplify collaboration with their partners, right? And they wanted to develop new applications at scale. But the teams that they were running their production systems did not have the capacity. So in less than a month, they were able to kind of build like an open API sandbox or a developer sandbox, which had around 155 open APIs across multiple categories, which simplified their developer experience, right? And now they have more than 50 partners who have joined the platform, which includes fintechs, large financial and non-financial corporations, and it has really helped them kind of accelerate their CI/CD pipeline and bring innovation to the fore, right, and bring it to their customers, because these partners are bringing that on their sandbox, on their platform. Again, then we are seeing large, banks, global banks, which we can't name, unfortunately, but banks who needed to rapidly build their open banking propositions were able to do it, within 5 weeks. Solution is super scalable. It can be deployed in any country, and effectively lets them use, cost effectively scale compute, and then bring advanced data analytics, which effectively then enhances their user experience. So these are some of the examples which I've seen. One of a few of many that we are seeing will happen in India as well.
Thank you so much, Ritesh and Vineet. I think there were some great examples. I think they help us understand much better how things will change in India. And Prakash, I want to come at you. One of the key issues is that India has very different kinds of banks, and of course different banking regulations, as every country has. Now, one of the issues for foreign banks in India is that there is limited distribution. There are restrictions, perhaps on opening branches, etc. So, as a banker, do you see open banking as an opportunity to level the playing field for such banks in India, which are digitally very strong, but may not have the normal ways of customer access, especially to SMEs, etc.?
Yeah, no, I think this is again a very interesting area where, when we have to achieve real financial inclusion at a lower cost, at a scalable digital, you would need many people to participate, as we have been talking. And I think there the whole distribution related constraints will be challenged, in my view. But if I talk about, before I talk about the whole opportunity for a bank like us in India, I would like to draw reference to the whole regulatory and legal framework, because that's the starting point for any bank or a scheduled commercial bank or a financial institution to start thinking about it. In fact, our discussion is very timely. Niti Aayog came out with a draft paper on digital banking, a first one, formal one, 4 or 5 weeks back. And if you look at that paper, it clearly calls out that whole success of UPI to create success in the whole payment space. So I think the paper actually says India is at the cusp of creating a digital SME bank, digital banking, on back of the technical tech stack capability it has created. And you already have account aggregator framework, which is in place, right? So I think it's a very good time to start thinking about. So a bank like ours is thinking about it, because now there is a framework, or it's actually a discussion paper, so it will take time to get into action. And I think RBI hopefully will jump into the whole discussion and the discussion. So I think we are looking forward to kind of participate in this whole creation. I think what route we will take, what path we will take, is to be decided. We will largely follow the platform and partnership approach which we spoke about. It can actually, if you read the paper, it actually gives various examples of digital bank initiative done by the conventional bank. You can do a digital, a mobile only banking, as Ritesh was talking about, for one product, one customer segment, and or you can do a full-fledged digital bank launch. The paper also is going to build a framework, talks about a framework to license, right? Vineet also talked about beyond banking, and that's another area I think will get possible if we build a digital bank, a bank like ours, because then you can get many people who serves a business other than just the banking problem. And on that, we have made a little bit of start. We have started launching our beyond banking kind of proposition, solving other problems, and I think that kind of builds the whole learning phase for us well. Uh, for HSBC, I think there is one advantage, however, that we have a playbook in other developed markets. Like in UK, we have launched a digital mobile only bank called Kinetic. It's a 6 to 8 months old story, and it's seen huge success. It is completely digital. It's on the mobile. It is supposed to be completely open banking, and it is supposed to have all the facilities other than banking, also for the small businesses to kind of take help from. We are doing a lot of work on beyond banking in our home market, like Hong Kong. So we're looking forward, as in the country, as a regulatory framework kind of spans out, and we can put some of these learnings from other markets as well. I think clearly very exciting phase for a bank like ours, because it challenges the whole distribution constraint we have because of the regulation, and you can use technology. Not I think most of the technology will not be yours. It will be of people who have done a better job, or they are expert in that field. So very exciting time, but I would say very early time. It's the thoughts are in the developing stage, I would say.
Absolutely. I think what you mentioned was really exciting, Prakash. And I think it goes back to what Vineet said really at the start. It's all about collaboration, right? So that part about using others' technology, I think that's extremely fascinating. Vineet, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the myths related to open banking that you see out there, and especially when it comes to SME customers? And is there anything that we need to do when it comes to educating banks as well as SMEs when it comes to open banking to help them realize that it's for everybody's benefit, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. And, there are all sorts of myths about open banking. Some are positive, like exaggerations, and some are extremely negative, which are talking about, fear mongering. Um, I think the biggest myth, uh, if I were to take the SME perspective or a customer perspective, that all of us, I think, as banking users would have, is that this word "open" and opening up of data is a little unconcerting for all of us. And does it mean that my data can be shared now with just about everyone? So HSBC is no longer, or my bank is no longer, or wherever I bank is no longer the custodian and going to protect my data. They're going to just openly share it with everyone. So I think that's one of the most important perspective. And from a digital consent, customer consent for sharing his data, India is taking very important role. The AA framework, the account aggregator framework that has come up, and RBI has kind of done a wonderful job. There is a whole consent framework that's powering it, that the regulator has an independent body kind of, auditing and managing that consent and recording that consent, so that it's no longer with one bank or one person. It's become a central and a nodal consent mechanism at a kind of an India level, kind of a UPI consent type of infrastructure that will allow recording of proper consent, revocation of consent, what can be shared, when can it be shared, and all of that. So this data is truly secure. Open banking does not mean open, does not mean insecure. Open means more secure, actually, because we are opening up data for collaboration. As responsible technologists and responsible bankers, all of us are more worried about securing that data when that data gets interchanged or exchanged in a consented fashion. As a layman, I would be like, if I enter my net banking credentials somewhere, are my funds going to get compromised? Because that's what we are teaching, consumers, that, don't give your OTP to someone, don't give your password to someone. And here is open banking use cases, which is making it more seamless and simple for the user. And they ask you, like, enter your open, net banking passwords. So, I mean, another myth is that your funds never get compromised. If you share your data, you share the proper consent, your funds can never be touched till the time you initiate any transaction. But what it does is giving account access gives you ability to use if you're new to credit, or like, I remember Prakash was mentioning in the beginning that there's 65 million, SMEs, and 95% of them are beyond the formal banking sector. So you really don't have a credit history. You don't have no data on which lending can be done to you, or underwriting can be done on basis of that. So it gives access to create models for companies, digital companies like us. We've developed scorecards that understand this and transfer that understanding to the bankers so that they can take quick decisions for fulfilling your needs. I think one of the other problem area that I continue to see and hear about from a negative perspective is it's both on the tech side, banker side, where who are more, because that's the banks are more responsible party in this transaction to create the open banking infrastructure. It's very difficult to understand and navigate the whole situation, especially if you look at banks have a lot of legacy, and that's not negative. They have built up proven banking systems over the last so many years, so many decades. And these are very secure systems which work at tremendous scales across geographies. Now that cannot be changed so easily. So understanding all of that and converting that into an open banking infrastructure is difficult to understand and navigate as well. So one of the myths there then becomes is that it's just impossible to kind of really create a banking as a service. And I would say that, and I'm sure Prakash and Ritesh can talk more about it from their experience, and more so Prakash, I would say, like, you really have to focus, and it's not that difficult to create an open banking infrastructure. It's just that you have to really focus and understand what you're building for. You don't have to look at the legacy infrastructure in totality and then try to convert like for like in an open banking into an open banking infrastructure. So, I mean, from my experience, that's some of the myths and things I can share, and why we should dispel those myths. I want.
Absolutely, really. I think those are really some of the myths that will come up, and I think Vineet, you've really helped us really understand some of them very well. Prakash, I wanted to come at you, and I don't know if this is a myth really, but the entire fintech industry is really about collaboration, right? And when it comes to SMEs, certainly there are a huge number that are still unbanked in India, but there are also, especially in the urban areas and in certain sectors, uh, there are a lot of banks who deal with SMEs, who have great businesses with them. Now, do you foresee really any resistance from some of these banks who might have a large SME customer numbers, have deep insights into their businesses, etc., and therefore who may not see a benefit in being part of open banking?
Not really. And then a short answer is not really. I think this will create capability set for all people to benefit from. If you look at one of the deputy governor of RBI addressing this at a fintech kind of gathering, and he said that it's not about banks competing with fintechs, it's about bank competing with banks who uses fintech more smartly, right? Vineet also said banks are built over a period of time. They're regulated. There is a trust factor. They have liquidity and all that. But can banks develop all the capabilities we need to bank the 65 million SMEs on their own? The clear answer is no. Who will do that? I think Vineet and Prakash and Ritesh together can do that. So I think it's the biggest myth. But if you look at the thought leadership of regulator, government, eminent people in the fintech, nobody is really now talking about being challenged by each other. In fact, we have just done something with Risk to Credit, where we're enabling the whole credit process when I have to do small value loans. And I can tell you, we wouldn't have dreamt to do it on our own because you sit in a bank, right? So I think it's clearly a collaboration story. In fact, fintechs are not going to replace banks. They're actually not going to compete with banks. They're going to enable each other and in the whole journey. And there is enough catchment to reach out, right? So, and look at some of the examples in the Western market, right? Have banks really lost market share? I think they've gained market share by working with fintech. So it's the biggest myth. In addition to what Vineet said, open doesn't mean insecure. I think Ritesh is going to make it secure because the cloud computing allows you to make those safety related features. So not at all, Ivor.
I think that's great coming from you, Prakash, and also not just because you've been a banker, but also the bank that you represent. Again, one of the world's oldest banks. Again, has been in India for such a long time, and I think it's very fascinating. It's very interesting when you say that really this is not about banks and fintechs competing, but really cooperating. And I think that has been one of the key words again that we've dealt with repeatedly, that it's all about coming together. It's really about collaboration. And at this point, Ritesh, I wanted to come to you because at the heart of it really, at the heart of open banking really lies cloud computing. That's what really makes it all possible from a platform perspective. So from a cloud perspective, what are some of the security and performance imperatives that are necessary for open banking? And again, we dealt with some of these myths. Vineet dealt especially with the security part of it. Now, how exactly is AWS building the infrastructure and the capabilities to support secure, scalable open banking applications in India that benefit both fintechs, banks, and ultimately really the customer, which is really what it's all about?
It's a very good question, and I think completely second, Prakash and Vineet when they talk about security as one of the myths, right? So short answer, yes, the cloud is very secure. In fact, we security is like the top priority for us, like job zero for us, as we say within the organization. And AWS essentially has been kind of architected to be like the most secure and flexible cloud environment available today, right? And there are a couple of reasons. The first is, AWS is essentially built to satisfy, say, military organizations, global banks, really high sensitivity organizations, right? Our services and our associated supply chain has been vetted to actually run top secret workloads. Now the good thing is that these services are not just available to these organizations. Whatever we do for them is available to all our customers globally, right? So the same secure software and hardware which is used by a military organization or a global bank is the same one which we use to build all our regions, right? So we have our infrastructure which is split into regions, right? Including the ones in India. So we have one existing region now in Mumbai, and then we have a second region coming up sometime next year in Hyderabad. So essentially, we have the core infrastructure which has been vetted to run these top secret workloads. On top of that, we have another, I'd say, 282 features and services which span across security, governance, compliance to help our customers. I'd say we have around 117 services which actually store and capture data. We give the ability for our customers to encrypt data on all of them, right? So that nothing is unsecured. And on top of all of this, we again have 98, I'd say security standards, compliance frameworks like PCI DSS, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, FedRAMP, and you name it, right? So all of them, we have basically ensured that we comply with them to satisfy regulators globally across the world, right? So from a security aspect, I think we've got it fully covered. But I wouldn't stop there, right? So banking APIs benefit from other features from AWS as well, right? So you get a lot of agility, which could be running how you manage your CI/CD pipelines, API-driven infrastructures, improving your customer experience, which could be providing instant or near instant access to accounts, to data, and some of that we talked about today. Augmenting some of the business decisions, right? How can we have frictionless integrations with data lakes, analytics services, And then on top of it, right, how can we simplify the reporting and auditing, because that will be a big part of being secure and being compliant, but access to data, audit reports, taking backups, programmatic evaluation of controls, adherence to all policies. So we want to make sure that we have covered from all angles, and enable that the end customer gets the right experience from whoever they bank with.
Very, very interesting. And I think hopefully that'll give all banks the confidence. I think we've really dealt with all aspects of open banking. It's really been a education for me, and also terms like beyond banking, etc. This collaboration between fintech and banking, and really understanding that it's not really about competition, but really collaboration. So finally, I want to ask you, Vineet, and maybe Prakash, you can add to this. From a lender perspective, what are some of the keys to successfully implementing open banking? And as I'm sure there'll be a lot of lenders, CTOs, etc., will be watching this. What are some of the digital must-haves to really get started on this journey?
Sure, I think that's a good question, Ivor. And there's multiple perspectives to it, and I will share my perspective. I'm sure Prakash, running a huge business, touching the lives of many small businesses, can share more about that and more insights. But from my perspective, from a biz2x perspective, what we've learned is that if you're really the several keys. One is the market or the business perspective to it, and the second is the tech or the technology aspects to it. Market or a business must have perspective. One of the biggest learnings across several things we've done at global and India level is that there's this talk of a minimal viable product, and that what should experiment and take out to the market. I think that's one of the myths. It's not an open banking myth. Minimal viable product is basically creating a lot of friction and disaster in the market. What we really need to focus on as a business is a minimal marketable product, something that can solve a customer problem, a customer can use, and then can prove a use case to be successful. After that, you have to scale it up, right? So I think that's a must have from a lender perspective, to find a use case and focus not on building something which is an MVP, but a minimal marketable product, something you can take to the market and sell today, right? That's one of the biggest ones. The other thing I would see, open banking is a paradigm shift in banks' thought process. It's about thinking in an open fashion, outward. Banks systems and the business models have been built because traditionally it was a very regulated, my data, my customers, stonewalled, protected, highly secure kind of a database. If you're building an open banking strategy and open banking capability, the paradigm shift that needs to happen has to be think outward, simplify the user experience, not based on what we know about the customer, but based on what else the participating ecosystems can add value, uh, and enable for the customer. So that thinking outward mentality is the paradigm shift that needs to happen with businesses, with banks, business teams. And the third thing I would like to add to that is the resilience of business models. More often than not, you go with, I did a deal with this ecosystem and we'll do a rev share of this nature, and then you'll just build the systems for that. You hard code that into the systems we are building, the open API stack. That's not going to happen because you have to be open for different business models. I mean, that's a must have from our perspective. So, from a market perspective, first build an minimal marketable product, not an MVP. Think outward, simplify the customer experience. The resilience of business models has to be built into the open banking layer as a business must have. From a tech perspective, biggest one is microservices. Really, what microservice is, like Ritesh can also speak about it, and there's a tech perspective. I can have a 40-minute session on that, but very simplistically, taking a 30-minute 30-second introduction to it, a micro, if you're building APIs, don't build APIs which do too many things. or don't have the APIs which are writing to a single database, because then all those APIs will have a single point of failure, which is that database or that big functionality. Create microservices that enable small transactions. If you were to open a customer banking account, just open a customer banking account and have a database that just holds the customer bank account information. What true microservices enable is that you have faster, more stable, and more feature richness in creating your APIs. If you look at Amazon, not AWS, but Amazon.com or Amazon.in, Ritesh can talk and validate this number. But if you go as a consumer to Amazon.in, I purchase a lot. I'm a Prime member, so go to Amazon.in. It's not one service that renders that web page. I don't know the exact number, but I know that number is fairly high. It's 40, 50 services which are contributing small amounts of data, and hence that page loads up so fast, even at scale when hundreds of thousands of users are using it. So that's the power of microservices. So to truly understand from a tech perspective and enable is going to be the critical tech factor for the open banking layer. And the second one is standardization. You cannot have an open banking layer which is consist of several one-to-one kind of integrations. I have one partner, I integrate with him. I have another partner, I integrate with him. I have another partner, I integrate him. That's not open banking. That's your traditional banking. That's just an API connect from a system to another system. You have to build for standardization so that you can have the agility of onboarding and flexibility of change through a low code or a no code configuration. I think with Biz2X, we're exactly doing that. We're setting up layers where you can have a consistent onboarding API and you can publish it. Much like, SaaS providers publish their API SDKs saying anybody who wants to build applications for Intuit QuickBooks can go and just read through the API and build applications that extend that functionality. Similarly, banks can open their APIs and say, here are the APIs. You can build your applications on top of it. Of course, it doesn't mean having the access to the API doesn't mean they get the access to the data. There is a compliance, onboarding, regulatory, business type perspective to bring and connect the systems. But that standardization allows flexibility of different business models and agility and rapid onboarding and partnership that Prakash also talked about. So that's my perspective, Ivor, on really what makes for the success of such initiatives.
That was really, really, really deep, Puneet. Prakash, Ritesh, anything you all want to add to this?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things. In fact, Vineet did cover various nuances of it. If you look at any business growth, it's a function of two things largely. One is opportunity, and the second is capacity. I think Vineet spoke about it in a different word, but he said that, right? So look at the market opportunity to build something which gets you business. I think that would be larger. And capacity means, again, digital tools, your APIs, open banking, partnerships, right? And I think you did ask the question, your question was specifically around lending. Since lending is about giving out money and there is consumption of capital, I would put another layer saying it has to be legally, regulatorily protected for banks, because finally the banks are using public money to lend, and that will continue in the world for a long time. At least majority of lending will happen from that source. So we have to build a regulatory and a legal framework over technology.
I think, we've really had a really fascinating discussion today. It's really a fascinating topic, open banking. And I think I now understand much better why this is such an important trend in banking. I think we looked at the benefits, really. We've looked at where open banking stands in India. We went through some fascinating success stories. We looked at how banks in India might take to open banking. Again, dealt with some of the myths, and I think Ritesh very well brought out the the cloud aspects, how cloud is at the heart of it and what AWS is doing. And I think finally, Vineet and Prakash, both of you have really given a roadmap of sorts as to what really banks need to do to really get it right, to make sure they're in open banking and not just traditional banking. So thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you for the time today. Thank you for the time spent, for all the deep, rich insights that you brought to make this panel a real success. Thank you so much for being here.